Geek. Talking baseball every week. Because they're gleaming and they're geek.
And welcome to Gleaming and the Geek, presented by Black Stack Brewing. You probably are not going to be able to come to my daughter's wedding and drink Black Stack Brewing, but you can have it at your own liquor store. Just grab some on the way. You're going to love it. I'm John Bonus of Twins Daily. With me, Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic.
Is that you uninviting me, John?
No, you still get to come there and have the actual Black Stack Brewing that I picked up yesterday from the brewery and delivered to the caterer as part of my wedding duties.
There was a lot of
the
talk,
bride speech. Yes,
a lot of talk at in the press box because like half the press box is going to be there, the cool half. That it's a unlimited open bar, and people are pretty pumped up about that.
Well,
not me really, but everyone else are like, and I said, they're not afraid of that. The bonuses of anyone are not afraid of that.
Oh,
They've
no.
committed to the bit of an open bar because that is their dream.
Well, I actually made a pact with my college friends in 1989 that at any of our weddings they had to have an open bar.
89, 48 or something. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, right. If any of us losers ever find a woman to procreate with, and then those people find people to marry,
that's right. Yes,
we're gonna have an open. But yeah, I like that as like a, because here's the thing. You got at most two of these, right? Like,
yes,
well, I guess that's not technically true, but you know what I mean.
Right, yes.
And it's
right.
like, it's you're no spring chicken. Like, you've been to plenty of weddings and you've been to plenty of bars.
That is correct.
And so why not combine them, and why not? Because I haven't been to that many weddings. A, because I don't have any friends, and B, because I don't like to go places. But the few I've gone to, where it's like a open bar for like 45 minutes or whatever, you know what it is?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Where it's like the first cocktail hour or whatever it is. The weirdest thing of a wedding like that is when they shut it down.
Right.
Or they run out.
Yes.
Or they're just like, you guys drank too. Because I was at a wedding, this is years ago, where they were like, this was supposed to be, an open bar for an hour and a half. It's 36 minutes in, and you lushes have gone through like all of our supplies,
right.
And we're shutting it down. And then you know what it does? It makes you think like worse of the wedding. Like, it makes you
right,
think like,
yes.
or of the marriage, or of the people getting, you're like, oh, they didn't even, like 40 years later, you're at like their kids' college graduation, and you're like, well, I did go to their wedding. And
not that good a wedding. Yeah.
They only did like one round of the open bar. If
well,
we're being honest.
It also, as you're planning stuff for the wedding, you're like, what are we going to do? You give yourself a little bit of forgiveness. You're like, they're going to have a good time. It's an open bar,
right?
You can cut corners, or maybe not pay attention to all the details for everything else. Because you're like, whatever, there's going to be an open bar. Do we have exactly the right songs for the DJ? Well, maybe not, but it's going to be an open bar.
Yeah, we need that for this show. Is this going to be the perfect show? No. Are we going to make like really brilliant points? Certainly not.
Certainly
but
not.
hey, it's an open bar.
An open bar, yeah. Feel free to crack yourself a Black Stack, folks. Pull up.
Yes. Everyone, please get drunk. Pause the show. Go get drunk. Come back. I guarantee we'll certainly be better looking. We'll be a little more charming. I don't know that our baseball opinions will be that much better. This week.
By the way, an open bar helps with just listening to Twins baseball news in general, I think, these days.
There is no bar open enough for that. I wish Royce always tells stories of, the 70s or the 60s or whatever it is.
Right.
Maybe even the 80s. I don't know. Of drinking in the press box.
Right,
I don't mean like he brought a flask in, although who knows. But where they would just have like beer in the press box.
Yeah.
Like during the games.
Yes.
And sometimes I think, that would come in handy. Like that would certainly change the tone of the coverage for some of these games. With the early deadlines, maybe a little bit tricky, but
I get the feeling that back then the official announcers were drinking during the games on a semi-regular basis.
They certainly the official scorers would be good for errors and hits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they're 2/3 of the way in terms of series through the homestand. You lost 2 out of 3 to Arizona. You lost 2 out of 3 to the Yankees. We talked, I guess, on the last show
Mondays. Yeah.
Patreon.com/Gleeman, which we had a good week on Patreon. We had that show, and then we also had Dan Hayes on Wednesday. And we hadn't had Dan on for a while, and also Dan's had a bunch of good scoops and reporting and all that stuff. And so we just kind of hop from topic to topic with him. Some stuff, like Baldelli's job status or,
Right.
what he thinks about the offseason in terms of trading more veterans. He had a story about the Twins slashing the pro scouting department. He had some ownership stuff. We hit on it was juicy, not to
Yeah.
steal
Yeah.
Mike
And 2
Russo's.
hours long, by the way.
Yeah, 2 hours and 10 minutes or something like
Yeah.
that, which is ridiculous. But on the last Patreon, we did just the two of us, just the two of us. You gonna play that at the wedding? I'll be ready.
Great.
Um, we kind of talked about how this last, what is it now, 7 weeks since the deadline. It's been awful. I mean, especially
Yeah.
after the first week
Yeah.
was decent. The last 6 weeks have been, maybe up there with the worst baseball I've ever seen, like consistently. But the thing we kind of talked about was it hasn't been like a 10-game losing streak.
Right.
It's been consistently losing 2 out of 3.
Yes.
Yeah, and the one you win out of 3, there's some nice moments, and like against the Yankees, for instance, we can talk more about this momentarily. But Simeon Woods Richardson probably had the
Yes.
best start of his career,
Yep.
and there's been some good offensive moments during these games. But they are just so consistently losing series, and it's not they lost 14 in a row. What a bad team. I mean, there's
Yeah.
been some losing streaks in there, but they've been pretty minimal considering their overall record. If you took a team with their record over
Right.
the last 6, 7 weeks, you would think, they probably lost 8 in a row. They lost 11 in a row. No,
Right.
they just lose 2 out of 3 almost every single series.
Yep.
And it's been kind of interesting to watch that. I guess in a way, it's kind of face saving for the team. Like it probably feels much better than winning a few in a row and then losing 8 in a row. Like to just
Yeah.
lose 2 out of 3 every time. But you look, they've lost 15 out of their last 18 series, which I mean,
Right.
and 10 of their last 11 series,
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah.
That is like legitimately
And
sort
almost
of,
all of them, they've won at least a game in those series. Like the
Right.
White Sox 4-game sweep was the one exception I can think of. So
yeah.
yeah.
And the one win over the Yankees, like I said, Simeon Woods Richardson pitched great, but also then 3 relievers came in and threw scoreless innings to make
Right.
the Twins' first shutout against the New York Yankees since August 11th, 2008, which is pre-Target Field. That was at the Metrodome. And the pitchers that night were Glenn Perkins for 8 shutout innings,
That's amazing to me.
and then Joe Nathan coming in for a 4-run lead and closing it out, which I'm going to guess that was Gardenhire going, well, how often do we beat the Yankees? It's not a safe situation.
Yeah, that's
Let's
right,
get
yeah.
this win,
That's
basically.
it. Let's try and
Uh,
end this little curse we're in, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then they lose the next 2 against the Yankees. They gave up 10 runs in both those games. Starting pitching once again pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I mean one of the highlights of the last time they were losing 2 out of 3, we would take a look and go, yeah, well, at least the young starting pitching is starting to show some stuff. Well, that was versus the Royals.
Yeah,
This is or the Royals or some other teams that aren't particularly hitting right now. This is versus the Yankees, and we saw Simeon Woods Richardson just looked outstanding, like one of those things where you go, oh, like that's his ceiling. That's a
yeah.
very different ceiling than I was imagining for Simeon Woods Richardson. That that
Not
happens
only,
to pitchers.
by the way, 11 strikeouts, which are a career high. He had his previous career high was 8,
Right.
and he had only done that once.
Right.
Like his range for good
Right.
starts in terms of strikeouts had been like 6 or 7,
Right.
and he gets 11 against the very good lineups, 6 shutout innings, a lot of swings and misses. We can talk more about that, but yeah,
And-
it's.
I'm sorry. and then
But
just
like
to
you said,
finish-
the rest of the rotation.
Yeah. Well, then I mean, the next night, Zebby Matthews, who's having some decent signs as well. Taj Bradley definitely also been having some decent signs. Both just get the snot kicked out. Zebby Matthews looked shell shocked after that. Like he looked in the post game like I'm not sure what happened. I've got to take a look at my metrics and stuff. Like I just don't know how they put up that many runs against me in such a short period of time. So
I wonder if, because he missed time with a shoulder injury too. He got
Yeah.
hurt in June, maybe something like that. Missed like a month,
Right,
over
yeah.
maybe over a month. I wonder if this is sort of similar to like the Festa situation where it's like he's pitching and he feels okay, but the inconsistency of the performance,
Yeah.
and then when it's bad, it's really, really bad, and no
Yeah.
one really seems to have a great explanation. And then like one out of every three starts, he'll just look good, and you'll be like, oh, well, okay, where's that? I'm not saying it's the same in terms of the actual physical
Yeah. Right.
problems,
Right.
but
Yeah.
when a young pitcher misses a month plus with a shoulder injury, and it's not resolved with like surgery or anything, it's just he rested and he came back. I think there's a decent chance always, setting aside the specifics of this one, but a decent chance that, that's not totally
Yeah.
gone, or it at least explains some of the inconsistency. Although with Matthews, I mean, he's been sort of like that since he came up,
That's a little bit.
where he's had one good start, one bad start. It's hard to get a read on him overall. The overall numbers for him are pretty bad. And yeah, you toss in Bradley, you toss in Festa, who's now hurt, which we have an update we can give on him. Bailey Ober's still pretty shaky. Joe Ryan's still dealing with an illness and hasn't pitched like himself since the trade deadline. Basically, it's one of those things where you had hoped at least the rotation and the rotation depth, and specifically the kind of 25 and under group, you could start to see signs where, like you said, yeah, you're losing a bunch of games, but at least you're getting five pretty decent innings more often than not from guys who you can plan around and build around and pencil in for next year. And I'm not saying these guys have pitched themselves out of it, but
Yeah.
you can also toss in Mick Abel, who made a couple of appearances and got demoted
Yeah.
back to AAA. This notion, and we talked about this with Dan actually on the Patreon a couple days ago, but this notion of, well, at least they got really good rotation depth. It's like, do they?
Yeah. Right.
Do they
We'll have to
for
see. Yeah.
opening day 2026? And that's been one of the things that's disappointing. I will give my usual update after playing the Yankees. Here are the numbers. I've updated the Excel spreadsheet of sadness.
On the topic of an open bar, now is
Yeah.
when you start cracking them. Yep.
Yeah. Since 2002, which is when Ron Gardner replaced Tom Kelly as manager, which is now 23 years ago, by the way. The Twins are 46. Now think in your head what you think the next number is going to be. They have 46 wins against the Yankees in 23 years. They are 46 and 127
Yikes.
against the
Wow.
Yankees. That includes the playoffs. They have won the season series against the Yankees once in 23 years, and that was in 2023. They've had a couple of tied season series with the Yankees.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that is truly amazing. And then the other thing I thought was sort of remarkable is they've had three managers during that time, Gardenhire and then Molitor and now Rocco Baldelli. All three managers over the course of 23 years have a winning percentage against the Yankees that is lower than 270. And they're all
Wow.
basically in the same range, which is kind of like amazing to me, is because the thing about Gardenhire, I'm not going to say he got fired because of what happened against the Yankees. He got fired because the organization fell apart and they lost
Sure.
90 games, 5 out of 6 years, etc. But one of the talking points, and it reminds me a little bit of like when Denny Green was the Vikings coach, and they would win like 10 games a year and they would get to the playoffs and they would lose in the playoffs. Well,
Right.
what happens in a scenario like that is people go, well, they can't take the next step. We got to find someone who will. But what you realize is sometimes when you bring in someone to take the next step, they in fact take a step back, and
Yeah,
then you're not
exactly,
you're not
right.
even consistently making the playoffs.
Right.
So, but obviously losing to the Yankees was a huge talking point with the Gardenhire
Sure.
led teams. They kept winning divisions. They kept getting swept out of the playoffs by the Yankees. Ron Gardner had a 269 winning percentage against the Yankees. So he won 27% basically of his career games against the Yankees when he was managing the Twins. He was then replaced by Paul Molitor, and Paul Molitor won 25.9% of his games against the Yankees.
Right. Yeah.
And then and including losing to them in the wild card round in 2017.
2017. Yeah.
Yeah, just a
Yeah.
one gamer.
Yeah.
But that was an ugly one. That was a
Yeah.
bad one.
Yeah.
Um,
Because they got the big lead in the top of the first.
Right.
And
They
give
knocked
it back in the
Severino.
bottom of the first.
they knocked Severino out in the first inning, and you're like, "Hey, look at this! It's a one
Yeah.
game. We don't even have to beat him more than once." Oh no! By the third inning, it was sad. And he gets replaced by Rocco Baldelli, who has a 262 winning percentage.
Right.
So the three guys have a winning percentage of 269, 262, and 259. The consistency of that is really sort of startling. Like
Yes.
it really is amazing. And I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, the Yankees are going to make the playoffs. This is a decent Yankees team. It's not a world-beating Yankees team, obviously, but it is, I guess, sort of nice to just lose 2 out of 3 to the Yankees, and no one is. This is we're probably talking about
Right.
it more than most people, just because I think it's
Yeah,
interesting. But
that's it. Yeah.
whereas if the Twins were neck and neck for that third wild card spot right now, let's say, and let's say they were in Cleveland's position, and then they had lost 2 out of 3 to the Yankees, then it would be like, oh my God, they did it to us again. Like they're
Sure.
gonna ruin the season. And now it's just like, yeah, they're bad again. It's just 2 out of 3. They've lost 2 out of 3 to everyone for 2 months,
Well, I
basically.
also don't think people recognize that. I mean, we talk about it. You went back through Gardenhire era, which is,
Yeah,
certainly a good one to go through because that's when they started making the postseason, and that's when they started getting knocked out of the postseason by the Yankees.
right.
Like that's why that's such a delineating point. But the truth is that the futility versus the Yankees goes back further than the actual Minnesota Twins. It goes back to the before that they were the Washington Senators, and the Washington Senators were known for always being up, always losing to the Yankees to the point where a musical was written, a hit musical was written about it, where
I
where the
I've seen it.
Washington Senators, there's a musical called "Those Damn Yankees," and it's all about how the Washington Senators manager sells his soul to the devil literally to beat the Yankees, and this is like 1950, 1940.
Yeah.
But when they came to Minnesota, they already had that reputation. They already had that rivalry, sort of in rivalry, I guess, not quite the right word, but that
Like the rivalry between the Globetrotters and the
yeah,
Generals.
they already listen. They already had that monkey on their back to the point where prior to Kirby Puckett's Game 6 home run, the most important home run perceived in Minnesota Twins history was hit versus the Yankees the day before the All Star game in 1965 because uh, because that was by winning that game they felt like hold on we can actually knock the Yankees off. They ended up going to the World Series and losing it that year, but to the Dodgers. But that was perceived to be the biggest home run in Minnesota Twins history because it was versus the Yankees, because it was after the All Star break, because it was in one of those games where if you read the details of that game, Aaron, and you read what happened in the ninth inning and how the Twins were ahead the whole game, and in the top of the ninth, the Yankees ended up having, I don't know, a batter's interference call. Like all these goofy things happen that the Yankees end up taking the lead in the top of the ninth, and everybody's like, we thought it was our year, and here we go again, etc. And then in the bottom of the ninth, Harmon Killebrew hits a home run into a towering home run that Twins win the game, and everybody's like, we believe this year. This is our year, and sure enough, they were right. So I mean, this goes back to the 70s. It goes back to the 60s. It goes back to the 1950s. It goes back to even before the Minnesota Twins were around. And I don't think a lot of Twins fans, who every generation has their own memories, etc., recognize just how many generations of Twins fans and or Washington Senators fans ended up hating the Yankees and how much they hated them.
Yeah, and you said you took a break from your college classes to watch that game in 1965, right?
No, that's I went to the musical back in 1953.
Okay. I when I
Whatever it
was a
was, right?
when I was a kid, my grandma was trying to give me some culture, and she said she bought tickets to see Damn Yankees. Jerry Lewis was starring in it.
Oh
It
yeah,
was I don't know where it was here, but wherever. And she was like, he likes baseball. He'll like that. 5 minutes in, I'm like, can we go home? Anyway, so that hasn't changed. I'm still
that's funny.
cultureless.
That's
Uh,
funny.
Here's the thing about the Yankees, and I get this question every time we read these numbers or I tweet these numbers. People go, well, have they done that to other teams? The truth is, sort of. I mean,
Right.
most teams have losing records against the Yankees over decades, over 50
Sure.
years, over whatever, like you just talked about. But because the Yankees have been the most dominant baseball team ever, like, over they've
Right.
very rarely gone more than like 10 years without being a dominant team. There's been a couple of them, but I looked and since '02, which is the stretch that I'm talking about, the last 23 years, Garden Hire on, this is the low. I mean, the Twins are at 266, I think winning percentage. No other team has lost, is below a 300 winning percentage.
Okay.
The Royals are like 310, something like that. There's a couple other teams that are like in the low threes. There's a bunch of teams that have lose. I mean, the majority of teams, I think other than like the Dodgers and the Phillies or something like that, pretty much every other team over the course of 23 years has a losing record against the Yankees. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of like, yeah, they do that to everyone,
Right.
but not like this. I mean, not like this, not over this level of consistency, not where there isn't even like a couple of seasons where the Twins won, 4 out of 6 or something like that. Not over 3 different managers having like almost like eerily identical winning percentages against them that are essentially 265. It really is sort of amazing. Now you're done with the Yankees. Good news. Now you have Cleveland, which has been its own little. I
Right.
mean, that's a true rival, obviously, and the Twins, go to 2019. Let's say they had season making success against the what were the Indians at that point, but the Guardians, where Guardians close the gap in the division. Sano hits the grand slam. They have that double header that they sweep and go to the playoffs. It hasn't been obviously as one sided. However, over the last 4 or 5 years, it has been pretty one-sided against the Guardians, and particularly games in Cleveland
Right.
have been a real house of horrors with just walk-offs and a lot of Emilio Pagan,
Yeah, you're right.
a lot of Josh Naylor, a lot of that sort of thing. Now this is at home, and this is the last home series of the season. 4 games because they're making up a rained-out game from earlier in the season. So there's Friday, then there's a doubleheader Saturday that John has scheduled his daughter's wedding against, thankfully. And then the final game of the home schedule is Sunday. Cleveland now all of a sudden has won like, I don't know,
Yeah.
12 out of 13,
Yeah.
13 out of 14, something like that.
They got to
Uh,
play these games.
Right.
This is we got a rainy weekend coming up. I know this because our cocktail hour outside has been canceled for the wedding. I think has been canceled outside, and they got to play 4 games in between the raindrops here because the Cleveland just swept the Tigers. They're now within 3.5 games of winning the AL. They're by the way, they're still not a playoff team, postseason team. They're outside, just 1 game, I think, outside the
I
wild
think
card.
I think
something
a
like that.
game and a half out of
Game and a
the
half.
third wild card.
Right, and then but now they're also chasing down Detroit, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, that'd be something to catch them.
Now, normally, I would say, well, as bad as the Twins are, they at least have a chance here to play spoiler. Even if you can win 2 out of 4, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Win either Friday or Sunday and then split the doubleheader. Is that a tall task? I'd say, you can at least take some solace in, we hurt our rivals here. Our rivals got hot. We're trying to make a late charge after being
Right.
written off by everyone. But boy, I don't have faith in this team even doing that. Like,
That would be fun. That would be fun to
absolutely. I mean, that's all you have left at this point, right? I mean, like if
Right.
you're a Twins player, you're playing for yourself, you're playing for pride, you're playing to, as they say in football, put some plays on tape. Do your own thing, whether for the Twins or someone else. If you perform well, people will take notice. There's always that aspect of it. And I think
and especially given the background of how dominant Cleveland has been in a lot of these games, how often they have ended up spoiling the Twins season, leading them to be given a negative cycle in their schedule. They were definitely the team that crushed the Twins. 2022 is still fresh in my mind, going over to Cleveland and on life support and getting the snot kicked out of us in, I think, 3 out of 4 games or something to the point, including us being swept in a doubleheader. Like, yeah, I would very much like to stick it to Cleveland a little bit.
I never thought when we started this show I would hear the word snot so much. That's your go-to. Let's talk about our first couple of sponsors, including our presenting sponsor.
Yes.
I am pledging to drink multiple Black Stacks tomorrow at John's daughter's wedding. I'm not even that much of a drinker at this point.
No.
Court ordered can be, but no, that was a joke. I don't really have a good reason for it.
I don't think I brought any THC drinks for you. I just got the seltzers.
What are you trying to say, John? But there will be Black Stack there.
Yes.
Do we know which Black Stack will be there?
Oh yeah. We've got let's see. I've got a lot of Slopes French Pilsner. Pilsner. You're gonna love. I think you're gonna be your go-to. I think a lot of other people are gonna go to one of their other go-tos, which is the local 755 IPA. And on top of that, they've got a couple. Now they are like on a weekly basis releasing stuff to their liquor stores, etc. Last week we talked about. What was the name of it? Oh, I'm blanking. Anyway, we've got a case of that. And then this week we've got a case of the Third Wheel Northeast IPA, which is the third wheel is because they've got a third hop added to their Citra and Mosaic. It's the hand selected New Zealand Super Delics. I haven't tried it yet. I know it is going to be great because they do great IPAs. And in fact, I also got them to throw in a case of the Metrodome Ballpark IPA, which is had at the state fair, and honestly is the best IPA I've had, or hazy IPA I've had this year. Phil Miller's going to go crazy for it. So, bottom line is they're known for their beer. Now it's available everywhere. It's available throughout Minnesota. We're starting to see it in Wisconsin. We're seeing it in North Dakota. You're going to love it. And if you can't make it to the wedding, you can get all of these beers also, or you can't make it to your liquor store. You can also get it at their tap room. It's one of the largest tap rooms in the state of Minnesota. It's in a former Spam can factory. They've got a 190-inch big screen if you want to watch some Twins games or Wolves games or Vikings games or whatever. And if you go there, you can enjoy a beer on tap and then take a 4-pack home with you by mentioning the code word. You go Gleeman in the Geek, and you can get $2 off of a 4-pack. So
Nice.
check out Black Stack Brewing. You're going to like it very much.
I like that. Okay. Our second sponsor is Factor.
Yeah.
And John raves about this. I like it too, but John goes nuts for it.
Yes.
But I mean, here's Factor Meals. Here's how it goes. Every week they have a different menu of tons of different options, and you can cater it towards. You just got very close to the camera, John.
Okay. There we go.
It's disturbing, especially HD. I don't know. I at least have the pride to stay away. Factor Meals. If you're on a special diet, if you're vegetarian, if you want something kid friendly, you can pick all different sorts of things. You can pick and choose each week, and then they just send it directly to you.
Yeah, that's right.
Super easy.
I think I like them. I think I like them more than you do because I sometimes get to the point where I'm like, I've been too busy today. I don't have any idea what I'm eating. What do I eat?
I've never been that busy in my entire life. But
you pop it in the microwave. It's tasty. It's healthy. It's simple. It's delivered right to you. It is honestly, it's like a hack on how to do food, how to do one of your basic life necessities.
And they're good. I mean, they've sent us different samples of it. They're legitimately good. I can attest to the fact that they're super easy, which is important for me because I don't know what I'm doing in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You can eat smart at factormeals.com/Gleeman50off, like 50 off. Use the code Gleeman50off and you get 50% off your first box. Plus, they'll toss in free breakfast for 1 year. So that's the code Gleeman50off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box, plus free breakfast for a year. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Factormeals.com/Gleeman50off. Yep. All right. Talked about the Dan thing. I thought the Dan. I'm not going to compliment Dan by any means, but it was a good episode. People were like, Gleeman was nice to Dan. Late in the season. I don't have the energy anymore. There were a few where I'm like, I think I said at one point, I reject your premise. Which is,
well, if that's as harsh as it gets. That's pretty softball.
Yeah. I didn't insult him personally this time, but I got to sit by the guy. We should also know, we did the full story of this the last couple episodes, but John affected change with the Minnesota Twins to the point now I'm thinking, how can we sort of use this for something real, big on field? But what happened was, there's a very quick version. We don't need to cover it, but I don't think we had talked about it because it all took place
it took place after the last free show. It started Friday night. Yeah.
So basically, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but this is my version of it. Is when season ticket holders for the Twins, you get rewards points for money spent. And you can use those points throughout the season. You can get memorabilia, you can get autographs, you can use it at concessions, you can use it all sorts of stuff. It's one of the perks of not just buying single game tickets. It's one of the perks of investing in your Twins fandom and paying, for blocks of tickets. And this is the last homestand of the season, so John and many others showed up, for the Arizona series. And we're like, I have X number of points on my account, my Twins rewards account or whatever it's called. Let's get some hot dogs and some free beers and whatever. We'll use them up this homestand because they don't roll over season to season. And so then John and others, you punch it up on your phone and you start scrolling through the available items, and it's like, what happened to all the concession stuff?
Yeah,
Like
that's right. The
that's which
concession cash, the
which has
concession
been
cash card,
available
right?
all year is no longer available.
Mhm.
Some of the other stuff had been removed, and what was in their place available was the saddest collection of memorabilia, autographs, jerseys from traded players. In other
Right.
words, you could get really, you were pretty limited. Like you could get a Griffin Jacks autographed baseball if you are really into the, setup man for the Tampa Bay Rays now. You
Right.
could get
Yes.
a Carlos Correa City Connect jersey, which are, by the way, selling for like 80% off in the team store. That was what they had replaced it for. And so John, in the moment, tweeted that out, and other people were chiming in. It certainly wasn't just John. It was dozens and hundreds
Sure.
of people who were like, what the hell's going on? And so we talked about it on the show. I even got John to go off on a rare rant for him. And then you talked about it again on the power trip a couple days later. And give me, what was the resolution
The
to this?
resolution is that the Twins looked into it. Apparently, they started looking into it Friday night when I tweeted it out. By Tuesday afternoon, they had put the concession. They put you could see that they'd put a couple of other things back on there, like I think some stuff that had been from previous years. But by Tuesday afternoon, they got the concession cash options back up there. So people who showed up in time for Dollar Dog Night could get redeem
Right.
600 points for $10 worth of concessions at Target Field for the
Yeah.
rest of the homestand. So
John got, I think, kind of a fitting Gleeman and the Geek experience from his point of view, in that he got a phone call from a Twins official,
right.
which is the half that I experience a lot.
Yes.
And then the phone call was a friendly phone call saying, thank you, we're going to fix this, which is certainly not my experience. That is the John Bonus
Yes.
experience, because he's got charm and various other things.
That's why I'm thinking about tweeting next about the payroll, and the $180 million payroll that we had in 2023 has gone away. Let's see if we can get it to change, folks. Maybe they'll call me and thank me for getting the payroll back up to 180 million.
Yeah, let's start with like a platoon corner outfielder and go from there. Let's start low. Let's start manageable and see if your powers can be used for good and evil.
That's it.
So yeah, that was I know John takes a great deal of pride in being part of the Twins fan community. And first of all, he just wanted his free beers that he's worked
Well,
towards all
exactly,
season,
right,
which
yes.
is,
By the way, I can't even use these concession cash
Why?
anymore because I'm not going to be able to make any games this weekend. I've got a wedding.
right.
Right.
Okay. Well, sorry, buddy. You're going to have to drink the beer you paid for at your own wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So yeah, people, if you didn't like John before, and let's be honest,
We understand.
now there's a reason to like him.
Cleveland understands.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a little bit already about how bad the pitching has been, and they've played, and it really started before the trade deadline. It started coming out of the All-Star break, where they played the Rockies, they played the Dodgers, they played the Nationals, and that's where the season kind of died. That
Yeah.
stretch of
Yeah,
three
right.
series, I think,
I mean,
where
it started in the first inning of that Rockies game.
right, Chris Paddock gave up four
First
runs or whatever.
First
Yeah.
4 batters, right?
So since the All-Star break, they've now, as of Friday when we're recording this, they've played 56 games. So a little more than a third of a full season. During those 56 games, they have a 5.65 team ERA as a pitching staff, which is
Wow.
the second worst in all of Major League Baseball during that time. Better than only the Colorado Rockies, who essentially play their home games on Mars.
Right.
Like,
Right, yes, right.
I mean, the Rockies, they have the worst ERA every season, whether they have good pitching, bad pitching, whatever. Like,
we should point out the Rockies took 2 out of 3 and threw the Twist.
that's true. And
During
also
that stretch.
not only do the Rockies, they play in Coors Field at altitude. The ballpark is the most
Right.
hitter friendly maybe in the history of baseball, and has been for 30, 40 years, whatever. But also the Rockies are like one of the worst teams in the history of the National League this year.
Sure.
Like they're going to win. They're going to lose 100 and who knows games. They're the only team with a worse pitching staff than the Twins since the All-Star break, and the numbers since the trade deadline are even slightly worse than that, obviously. We've talked a lot about the bullpen, and the bullpen has basically gone as expected post trade deadline, because you traded your 5 best relievers from a bullpen that was good, but certainly not great at that
Sure.
point. And we looked at it at the time and we were like, well, who's even in the bullpen at this point? Like all of a sudden it's Cole Sands and Funderburk and
Right.
Topa. And our hope had been that maybe after a couple weeks of kind of getting settled, they'd start to fill in some of the bullpen blanks with guys who might have some semblance of a future, even if it's just next year, 30 innings or something. They really haven't done that at all. And some of it is guys have been injured. Some of it is they just don't have that sort of talent ready at AAA, which is not a mark against them, obviously. But,
Yep.
you know, they've stuck with the Michael Tonkins and the Cabreras and the Hatches and that sort of thing throughout. And if you go look at the performances, these guys have been terrible.
Right.
You know, they got 6-7 ERAs. They've thrown 20 innings, stuff like that. They've really just sort of given up on, I'm not saying trying to build a good bullpen, because that was never going to happen, but even trying to find things out about guys in the bullpen. You know, you still have Travis Adams and Pearson Ole, and sort of maybe that's kind of more fitting what I was looking at. But I had hoped there'd be 4 or 5, 6 spots devoted to finding things out about 25-year-olds instead of just letting 35-year-olds get knocked around and eat innings, basically. But beyond that, and so we've talked a lot about that over the last month, the bullpen, how bad it's been, there isn't even really much to point to of like, yeah, the bullpen's bad, but maybe this guy can be good next year. And that's been disappointing, I think.
Yes.
I think it's a missed opportunity, but it also maybe exposes the lack of high-end talent they have available in the market.
Right.
But what's really now, I think, been even more discouraging, because, you know, no one expected the bullpen to be anything but bad, has been the performance that we talked briefly about at the very beginning of the rotation. And, you know, you're at the point now where, you know, Lopez is back.
Yeah.
Joe Ryan's chugging along, so, you know, hopefully. Bailey Ober hasn't.
Kind of. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, that's part of the disappointment. What I mean is,
yes.
you have Lopez, you have Ryan, you have Ober, you have Zebby Matthews, you have Simeon Woods Richardson. You went out and acquired in a 1-for-1 deal for Griffin Jacks, Taj Bradley, because he's 24 and he's major league ready, and now he's in the majors.
Yeah.
You lost Festa to an injury, which we're going to touch on in a second. But for the most part, and then you, like we said, you picked up Mick Abel as a big part of the Duran trade, and he pitched twice horribly, and you sent him back to AAA. And now I'm looking at it, and it kind of goes back to the theme of what we were talking about at the beginning of last Friday's show, which is the idea that we'll just get through this season, and you get a clean slate, you go into 2026, and things will be okay. And I mean, I don't think it'll be as bad as it is now, because it would be tough to be that bad. But the rotation is a prime example of why I have such a level of skepticism towards that notion in general. These are the starters that you're going to be leaning on in 2026. Yeah. And by the way, you might end up trading Lopez and or Ryan from that group, which takes a huge chunk out of the effectiveness or the upside and all that. There aren't like 3 other starters waiting at AAA that are going to jump in here early next season. This is the group of like 6 or 7 guys. And for the most part, Festa's injured. Zebby Matthews has been more often bad than good, including getting crushed by the Yankees last time. Taj Bradley had a couple of decent starts, but he's had a couple of clunkers, and he got crushed his last time out. Bailey Ober hasn't looked like himself since May, basically, and is clearly not right physically. And then Joe Ryan, which you hinted at, has not been able to. Yeah, I mean, the last 2 I think are due to illness, but whatever it's due to, he has been unable to answer the lingering question that has been there for the last 3 or 4 years, basically his whole major league career, which is no one doubts that he is one of the better pitchers when he's clicking.
Right.
The doubt is, can he pitch 30 starts and 6 months and 170 plus innings, maintain that consistency? And because of injuries and or ineffectiveness, wearing down, all that, he hasn't done it prior to this year. And we had relatively high hopes that he would be able to do it this year, because he'd been so good. I mean, he made the All-Star team. He was great midseason. And since the trade deadline, for whatever reason, now of late it's been illness, he just hasn't been the same pitcher.
Yeah.
And, you know, Simeon Woods Richardson looked really good his last time out, like we talked about.
Sure.
I think the best start I've certainly ever seen from him. And he's been pretty good here over the last handful of starts. He's been leaning more and more on his splitter, which has become a swing and miss pitch. His slider has made some improvements. Yep. So I like what I see from him.
Yeah, he's trending in the right direction.
Absolutely.
But basically nobody else is trending in the right direction.
And I will give Pablo Lopez a little bit of a shout out in
Sure.
that he missed 3+ months with a significant shoulder injury and has started twice. I think he's scheduled to go tonight for the third time. And he's looked mostly like himself. Not quite peak Pablo, but enough that you go, okay, this is encouraging. So those two have been encouraging. Everyone else, whether
Yeah.
because of injuries, ineffectiveness, demotions to the minors, the rest of that rotation is more questions than answers at this point. And certainly we had hoped that even if the team itself was horrible after the trade deadline, which was anticipated, that at least you could look at most of the rotation and go, the rotation's decent. They have good depth. They have some upside with the veterans. They have some upside with the young guys. You can at least start to form next year's opening day rotation. And I'm not saying they don't have 5 starters. They do. They have more than 5 starters. But they got basically 1 or 2 more starts each to finish on a note that can make you think, all right, I feel good about Taj Bradley next year. I feel good about Bailey Ober. I feel good about Zebby Matthews, because otherwise we're just going to go into the offseason. They'll have numbers, but there's no confidence in any of those guys.
I would suggest that if they were a team that was in an entirely different payroll situation, like let's say they've got a $200 million payroll or something, they would take a look at that rotation and go, yeah, well, we've got a fair amount of confidence in maybe the top of the rotation, but we need, we still need, Bradley and Festa and maybe Simeon Woods Richardson to get a little more seasoning at AAA, kind of try and figure things out. Let's go and get a veteran starter for a 4th and a 5th spot. Like that would be something that could be on a shopping list, somebody to hold down the fort. Now, they're not, I don't think they're going to do that. I'm not even sure that it's wise for them to do that. Right.
I mean, by the way, some of those guys literally can't be sent to AAA anymore.
Well, that's a good point.
They're like 26 years old with 2 or 3 years in the.
That's
in
a
the
good point. Yeah, I think Todd. That certainly, I think the case for Taj. I'm not sure. Might be the case for Simeon Woods Richardson.
But just in general, these are major league pitchers now, but for
Right.
better or worse. You know what I mean? Like
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I'm not even sure it necessarily would be a wise thing, but the point is that none of them have shown enough to be like, oh, well, there's our number 4 starter, there's our number 5 starter. And if you were more serious about
winning,
competing next year, competing next year, that would be the discussion that would be going on. But because they're less serious about competing next year, and because they've got bigger fish to fry over on the offensive side, potentially, at least where, this side hasn't been good, but at least there's some upside available there. Over on the other side, you're looking at a team that isn't good, and you don't see the upside in a lot of places as well.
They've now had the worst pitching staff in the league for 60 games. So even that is questionable at this point.
I just said they have not been good, but you can at least occasionally see some upside on there. And over on the lineup side, I don't see they also have not been good. And also I don't see the upside on a lot of those spots. So,
yeah, I mean, I think, and obviously people are sick of me saying this, so we don't have to go into it. But I think there's a real chance that they trade Ryan and or Lopez, in which case that completely changes the entire scope of that rotation. Even if you are somewhat optimistic about it, it's going to be based largely on those 2 guys being at the top and throwing 175 all-star caliber innings and filling in the blanks after that. Right. If they're not there, or even if one of them is gone, then all of a sudden Ober is a big question mark that you're relying on.
Ober's your number 1 guy, by the way, at that point. Right?
Well, yeah, if you trade both of them. So yeah, I think that's been, to me, probably the most disappointing aspect of it. I mean, there's been a lot of disappointing aspects, but is like, I had just hoped to see more. Taj Bradley just hasn't. He's looked a lot like the guy in Tampa Bay.
Right. Yeah.
Which I've seen plenty. I mean, he's pitched against the Twins several times, but I've watched him plenty where it's like sometimes he looks really, really good. He certainly has good stuff. I mean, he's throwing 98, 99. The curveball can be a good pitch when it clicks for him. But then you look up and he's got a 5 ERA instead of a 3.5 ERA. Right. And Zebby Matthews, we talked about at the beginning. I'm a believer in Zebby Matthews. The stuff is absolutely there, but I'm wondering if he's getting to a point. A, I'm wondering if he's physically 100%, and then B, I'm wondering at what point do they view him similar to how they viewed, let's say, Louis Varland, where it's like, he's got a 6-something ERA as a starter for 2 years. He throws 99. Could we just make him a reliever? And I don't have any problem with that, but you can't do that with everyone. Right. You can't do that with Taj Bradley and David Festa and Zebby Matthews, and all of a sudden you go, well, who's our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th starter? And and so that has been the most disappointing part to me. I will give props, like we said, to Simeon Woods Richardson, because he's been sort of, even last year and certainly this year, kind of the forgotten part of
Yeah.
this because he's perceived as having less upside than these
Right.
guys. Because
Yep.
just from a raw stuff standpoint, or even just a velocity standpoint, he can't compete with Festa or Matthews or Bradley or Mick Abel or anybody like that. He throws 93 instead of 98.
Man, we've just seen less swing and miss from
Right.
him. Right.
But he's been by far
Yes.
out of that 5 or 6 person group of 25 and under starter, he has been by far the most effective, the most
Yeah.
consistently solid, and that goes back to last year when he got thrown into the rotation and did a pretty good job. So now that maybe he's showing some signs of having a little bit more swing and miss, a little bit more velocity, a little bit more confidence in a second and third, off-speed pitch, the splitter especially, which he
Yeah.
really hadn't thrown until a few months ago, and now he's at the point he's throwing it 35% of the time against the Yankees and getting swings and misses with it. The slider, same thing. Then you start to go, well, okay, he's still 24. I think he's
Yeah.
as young or younger than all those other guys.
Yes.
He's been far more consistently capable, competent in the majors so far through a couple hundred innings at least. And now maybe he actually has a little bit more upside than we thought. You need to see more of it.
Sure.
But just don't lose sight of where he's at as you're dreaming on, Festa and Matthews and Bradley, and believe me, I'm as guilty as anybody. Those guys have more upside, and I want upside. But and then obviously the next, I'm guessing he'll have 2 more starts. I guess he could, yeah, he'll have 2 more starts. Pablo Lopez, presumably, to show he's healthy, and that's a big one too. But yeah, I mean the pitching staff has just become. And look, I grew up in the '90s. Bobby Nightingale and I were looking at some of the Twins stats, team pitching stats from the mid '90s, mid to late '90s, the Rich Robertson era, as I like to call it.
Why would you do that?
Well, because
Was
someone
it not enough to live through it?
No, never. It's like a scab you have to pick at.
Yeah.
Someone had said,
Rich Robertson era. Nice.
"Is this the worst pitching staff the Twins have had?" And I just instinctive said, "Oh, not
Absolutely
even
not.
close.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?" And then someone said, "Well, what if you look at just the second half? Like I said, they have a 5.65 ERA."
Right.
And I said, "Oh, sweet child, you didn't live through the '90s. A 5.65 ERA
Right.
would have been the ace of some of those staffs.
Right.
That would have been the number 2 starter or the closer." And sure enough, we looked and they had some years where the team ERA for the whole year was 5.65 in the
that's
Metro. But yeah, that's been, I think, one of the biggest.
Tewksbury would be a nice addition to as they like somebody to just kind of
Sure.
fill in at the back end of the rotation there to.
Yeah. Well, and it was basically at various points, it was like Brad Radke and
Yeah.
11 guys who shouldn't even be in the majors.
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
And then people would be like, well, how good can Brad Radke be?
Scott
He's only-
Aldred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frankie Rodriguez.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I mean, one day we should just read off the names. Remember some guys. That's
Yes.
an old Deadspin bit, I think.
That's
but,
right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So yeah. Before we talk about some lineup stuff, let's talk about our last couple of sponsors.
Let's talk about some lineup stuff. How about my lineup for Prize Picks last weekend? While it was sad to watch the Vikings lay an egg basically versus the Falcons, I did successfully predict that Aaron Jones wasn't going to have a great game versus them, and that netted me $60 on Prize Picks. I built a lineup. I put Aaron Jones in there with less yards than they had predicted them. I picked basically the free square, which was Travis Kelce getting half a yard of receiving yards. That one worked out okay. I had one other one as well that kind of hit. So things went pretty well for me on that one. This Sunday, let's see. You think Patrick Mahomes is going to have more than a half a yard passing? Aaron?
Yeah, they like to give you that free square.
That's right.
To get you started, and then you just pick more or less on various numbers. For
you
players.
build a lineup that way, and then based
Super
on that
easy.
lineup, yep.
And if you download the Prize Picks app today, use the code Gleeman, you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So that's the code Gleeman on the Prize Picks app. You get $50 to use in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right, and you can be like John, and you can pay for your daughter's wedding. Be honest, John.
Yes.
You just like picking against people named Aaron.
Well, that's always a winner.
Can never go wrong. You'll never go broke picking against Aaron.
The last sponsor, we have talked a lot about how we get fed up with the pull ad ownership because despite the fact that things seem to be stagnating and they never are really too willing to make a change. They won't make the changes even when it's obvious. After year after year after year, they won't make a change. And then I think, I wonder if any of my listeners hear that and go, maybe I'm being a little hypocritical because I won't make a change with my face, my own face, where I've been using these razors that I've had for, 30 years. I'm using them because I've had them for 30 years. I schlep to the store to buy them. I pay twice the price I need to pay. Uh, I have to ask somebody to unlock the cabinet at my store to be able to buy these, to pay these exorbitant fees when all they could do is they could just make a change. What would that change be, Aaron?
They can just send it right to you whenever you need it.
Yeah.
Lower price point, as good or better product. No social interaction. No waiting to, oh, I'm shaving with a rusty razor because I don't feel like going to get a new one. Couple clicks, they'll send it right to your door.
Harry's
Super
Razors,
easy.
right? Harry's Razors, and for a limited time, our listeners can get a Harry's trial set for only $8 and a free gift at harrys.com/Gleeman. Just go to harrys.com/Gleeman. Receive our exclusive discount after you purchase. They'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you.
Yes, harrys.com, harrys.com/Gleeman. Go get that trial set. Okay. Let's talk about hitting, I guess, a little bit. A few things. So let's see. Christian Vasquez is rehabbing with the Saints now. I think they're in
Wow.
Memphis. This is the last
Yes.
opportunity to rehab. Anybody who gets hurt after this point ain't rehabbing.
Yeah,
Because the
their
AAA
season
season
ends Sunday, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Vasquez is with the Saints now, coming back from a shoulder infection that was
Scary.
pretty scary.
Yeah.
I think I talked about it maybe on the Patreon, but he's back. He was back early in the week, and we got a chance to talk to him. He showed off his bicep, which had a PICC line in it for a month, which is like a catheterization
Right.
to give him. He needed antibiotics every 8 hours for 4 weeks, and they put the PICC line in, which they don't do just willy-nilly. That's a pretty serious thing. He was hospitalized. He, for a month, was unable to lift anything over 10 pounds with his right arm. So he's had quite a bit to come back from, but he, in his mind, he wanted to, if only like prove it to himself,
Sure.
to make it back from what was a pretty serious, it wasn't even an injury, it's just a physical issue. And he's pretty close, I think. I think probably barring some sort of setback or issue, I would probably expect him to play one of the final games of the season at the very least.
Good.
On the road trip, maybe in Philly, something like that, which I think would be good. Obviously, he's an impending free agent, so he's motivated to show he's healthy.
Sure.
And having him at catcher even for a couple games isn't such a bad thing because Ryan Jeffers has also been out for now going on 2 weeks after a concussion. He's been doing some stuff on the field. I know he hit off of I forget which reliever the other day, but he hasn't been fully cleared for the entirety of baseball activities. My thought on that is, Dr. Gleeman over here, but if there's anything you don't want to rush a guy back from for the final week of a completely lost season for a terrible team, it's a brain injury, a head injury, a concussion. And so it wouldn't surprise me
especially when you put him. You especially want to be careful about that if you're putting him behind a plate where you can get more foul tips off his head.
I mean, we've seen this with catchers over the years. Now maybe he comes back and he DHs a couple of games. That'd be fine just to get back in there. So that's the state of the catcher. And then in the meantime, obviously Mickey Gasper and Johnny Pareda have been splitting time behind the plate. It hasn't been great. Sure. I don't think it really matters. I mean, maybe that's played some role in the pitching staff being terrible, although the pitching staff was plenty terrible at times with Jeffers and even Vasquez behind the plate. I also don't really get the sense, and this can change. I mean, the bar for a backup catcher is pretty low, but I don't really get the sense that like Gasper and Pareda are, competing to be Jeffers' backup next year or something like that. It's possible, I guess, but I think
I don't know what they're. I mean, I don't know what they're doing at catcher next year, but I presume it's going to be Jeffers. That the plan is Jeffers takes a heavier load than normal, and they just get a backup either on the free agent market or stick with one of these two
Yeah, I mean,
guys if they
I
can.
think that will be the plan because for 2.5 years, Jeffers and Vasquez basically just alternated starts behind the plate. Like to a remarkable degree, they never had a third catcher in the mix until they both go down in a pretty short
Right.
period of time here. But also, we don't know that Jeffers isn't going to be traded.
You're right.
I mean, he's
Yeah,
entering
you're right.
next year will be his final year before free agency. He's going to cost $7 or $8 million. Or is he going
That
to be
is about the
around?
time they would trade a player, right?
Right. So
If they had options.
the catcher spot is either in some flux or complete flux, uh, depending on what they do with Jeffers. We had talked 2 episodes ago about how Cody Clemens had struggled for like 2 months, month and a
Right.
half.
Yes.
And I think I even said it seems like he's turning back into a pumpkin. He was hitting like 150 for 30, 40, 50 games, whatever it was.
And then the ball that he was hitting turned into pumpkins.
And that's right. And then he had a
Right.
3 homer game that I'll put up
Yes.
there thinking about it
Yeah.
afterward. Like that's as good as any game in Twins history, honestly. Like
Yeah.
4 for 4 with 3 homers and a double that hit off the wall and was almost the fourth homer.
Right.
It's hard to beat that really,
Uh,
in terms of just overall game. And I'm not going to say that one spectacular game of a lifetime
sure.
cancels out 2 months of hitting 150 or even going forward makes me more or less confident that he can be a part of next year's team or the 2027 team or something like that. But that does show why he's intriguing,
Right.
just that level of power. And I think he's got 20 homers as a part-time player basically this year. And if you're just going to offer one skill, that's the skill to offer.
Yeah.
Is 20, 25 homer power. He has some defensive flexibility that we haven't really seen lately because they've just put him at first base for the most part. I will say, like, the coaching staff seems to really like him as a person and a worker and all that, Baldelli included. His teammates seem to really gravitate around him in something of a leadership role, which is often difficult for a kind of journeyman waiver claim
Right.
role player type of guy. But maybe a little bit like Kyle Farmer in that regard, where he's just viewed as like such a good dude and a smart guy who's been around the block and willing to help
Sure.
people. So those are like the soft factors that I think if it's 50-50 of do we want to keep this guy and give him another role for next year, those would tend to push you to the side of, yeah, why not? And the truth is, you talked about the state of the lineup. Like there is
Right.
room for a guy like this. Like
Right.
it doesn't have to be the everyday first baseman like he's
Right.
been for the last month and a half. I think that's a stretch. But left-handed bat, platoon against righties, can play first, can play second, can play corner outfield, can pinch hit, can pinch run, can be a clubhouse guy. That does have some versatility, some usefulness,
Yeah.
and he's a low batting average, high power guy. Those guys tend to be a little bit underrated because most fans just hate that stylistically. We've talked about that over the years. I'd rather him be a 300 at bat guy instead of a 500 at bat guy for next year. But I do think he, a couple more big games like this, maybe he plays his way in there. Austin Martin, we've talked about, but he keeps rolling along.
Yeah.
He's one of the few guys who have sort of taken advantage. We talked about this last week, but he's had an even better week this week. Uh, Taking advantage of the opportunity created by the trade deadline fire sale and was basically handed a job after being at AAA for the last year almost. He's hit for average. He's drawn walks. He's stolen a bunch of bases. He's, hit a few doubles at least to show a little bit of juice in the bat. He's looked much improved, I think, in left field. They've stopped playing him really in center field, which I think is smart. He's another guy similar to Cody Clemens, maybe even more so than Cody Clemens. You got to think, given the state of this team, given the state of this roster, given maybe the state of this payroll, he's played himself into a role.
Yeah.
For next
I feel.
year,
I mean, yeah. It feels to me like both of those. Listen, I'm glad they've both taken steps forward, and it does appear that there's certainly a role for them on the 13 of the 13 position players you're going to have. I'm still more comfortable for both of them being more of a backup or a
sure.
part-time role.
By the way,
for lack of
they
a better
could platoon with each other if they wanted to.
right. Yeah, right. That's
Lefty
right.
and a
Yeah,
righty.
you're right.
But yeah, so I just wanted to shout him out because these shows lately have been negative, even by my standards, because there just isn't that much to really hang your hat on from a positive standpoint. Royce Lewis has 8 steals in 8 tries over the past 3 weeks after a grand total of 7 steals in his entire career prior to that point. and that has been fun to watch. I know it's been fun for him, kind of turn back the clock to what he maybe looked like on a regular basis prior to two torn ACLs sapping his speed and kind of changing his body and his game and all that. It's been fun to see. He's been
Yeah.
one of the guys to really take advantage of Baldelli pushing them to get aggressive overall, and that's been fun to see. Um, I wonder, and I've asked Baldelli about this a couple times, and he's talked about it, but I wonder they clearly need to. And this is opinion, but they, in my mind, they clearly need to get more athletic, faster, and better defensively. And that's been a huge weakness for them for 5 years
Sure.
or longer.
Right. Yeah. Right.
No one cares when you're 2019 Bomba Squad and you're setting the all-time record
Right.
for homers because who needs to steal bases and play defense when you're doing that? But since then, this front office has really shown no ability to build a roster that is anything but one of the slowest, least athletic, worst defensively in baseball. And that hurts your offense because you don't take extra bases and there's no diversity beyond hitting homers. You can't steal your way, play small ball and all that. It also hurts your pitching staff because you just aren't good defensively.
Right.
And then what ends up happening is people blame Baldelli for that. And they go, oh, he hates to run. Baldelli loves to run. Baldelli,
Yes, right,
as a
right,
player,
right.
was basically Buxton.
I guarantee you when the front office people talk about what the philosophy should be or what the plan should be for next year on the spectrum of, well, do we want to focus on hit stuff or do we want to focus on all around players? Baldelli is way over on the one side of the all around player, right? That's what he likes.
What happens is the manager gets blamed for everything, and that's part of the job.
Sure.
But what happens is, they hand him a roster that is the literal slowest in baseball year after year. Right. And then people act like he should have Trevor Larnach, stealing 20 bases or something like that. What we're seeing over the last 6 weeks or so is he said to everyone, the Trevor Larnachs of the world, the Matt Wallners of the world, the Royce Lewises, but then also
the Brooks
Keisho, Brooks Lee, but
right.
like I'm saying, the actual guys who can steal some bases,
Gotcha.
Royce Lewis, Austin Martin, Luke Keisho, etc. We're going. Like, don't worry about it. He didn't phrase it this way. I'll phrase it. There's nothing to play for. Go run.
Right.
But what I wonder is, and it's worked just fine. There's been some games where it's really broken things open for them, and that's the goal, is to sort of put pressure on the defense consistently, play for one run when you need it, but also sometimes you can just cause the defense to crack and you get a couple of runs that way. Now, ultimately, it hasn't led to winning, in part because the pitching's been so bad. And I also will point out, I don't think the defense has been good. I think the additional running hasn't actually shown itself in more athleticism and more range in defensively. But
you got the same guys playing the same defense. They're just running more. Right. Yeah. Right.
But it's been a net positive, I think, if only from a, stylistically, aesthetically more pleasing style to lose, I guess. But what I wonder is this enough sort of proof of concept for the front office? I know it's enough proof of concept for Baldelli, and you can tell by the players' mentality with it that it's enough proof of concept for them. They like it.
Right.
Is it enough proof of concept, though, for the front office, for the guys who actually make the personnel decisions and actually build the roster that then Baldelli has to work with? Is it enough proof of concept for them to prioritize that in any sort of meaningful way in corner outfield, in DH, in first base, up the middle, and I'll throw defense in there too, or are they just so set in what they think is the right way to do it? And I wonder how much 2019 sort of cemented that in their minds. You set the all-time record, you win 100 games with a Bomba Squad lineup, and I just wonder if you spend the rest of your career just sort of trying to reenact that,
maybe
something often unsuccessfully, because I think at the very least this team needs to be closer to what we've seen over the last 6 weeks with kind of the reckless abandon, the aggression, than the waiting for a homer version we've seen. But the problem is, we've seen Matt Wallner steal some you can do that, but over the course of a full season, that's ultimately not going to be a great winning strategy. You need faster guys. You need more athletic guys. And so I wonder from the front office standpoint, if they've seen enough to prioritize that. And by the way, those guys are going to be cheaper to get than sluggers. those guys are going to be more readily available than sluggers. And also, you have some of those guys in your minors already, some
Yeah.
guys who can run a little bit. So, from a payroll shedding rebuild standpoint, it is easier. I mean, we've seen the Rays do this year after year. It is easier to sort of build around young, cheap athleticism as a kind of roster-wide stylistic choice. And I would like to see them lean into that more. I don't need them to become the Brewers or the
Sure.
Rays or anything, but at least have it be a consistent weapon. And I'm mostly focused defensively on that.
Right.
Which
Well,
I just think,
that's so. I was going to make 2 points to this. The first is I think you make a really good point about, you know, ultimately what is going to drive this more so than I think even whether or not they want to adopt that philosophy is what is the economics of signing each type of player,
right.
right? Because they are still going to be one way or the other. They're working against some sort of payroll limit. They are going to have limited amounts of money to spend. They need to make some upgrades if they want to be competitive. Provided they're going to be competitive, it's a lot to a large extent. It's going to be, well, what does the market bring to us? Is it bringing to us more athletic guys who maybe aren't known for slugging 25 home runs, and maybe a little better defensively and a little bit more speed, or are we going to find a couple of guys floating around who are limited defensively, but they can hit the snot out of the ball occasionally a little bit, and happen to have first base and DH open. Do we care that much about the athleticism of those particular spots? So I would say that's probably, philosophy or no, I think that's going to end up being as big of a factor as to whether or not they end up being that philosophical about it. The second thing I wanted to say is that, kind of to touch back on that again, is I wouldn't be shocked if, we want to move that way long term, but right now our needs are basically at non-athletic positions, unless we're going to just give up on some of the spots that we have at some more athletic positions. Like, at what point do we start looking at a platoon for Royce Lewis that somebody's more athletic or more speed? Or do we have, what are we doing? Left field is a good one that they could probably address right now. And maybe they are addressing it by giving Austin Martin, the time that he is giving out there, or even bringing Outman, who hasn't done anything, but bringing him into the organization, right? Second base, I feel like they've got that.
I mean, here's the thing about second base, and even I'll say up the middle.
Yeah, well, let's keep going.
Brooks Lee's looked fine to me defensively. He's never going to be a great shortstop just because he's limited in terms of athleticism, arm strength, and I think he's been fine. I don't think he's been any worse than Correa. He hasn't hit enough to be excited about yet, and Keishel obviously has been really impressive offensively, way less so defensively.
Right.
The truth is, a Brooks Lee, Luke Keishel double play duo is never going to be above average. I mean, I just think that's how it is.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not saying
you mean defensively,
yes,
specifically.
defensively.
Yes, right.
Now, maybe they hit enough that you don't care.
Right.
But that's sort of an example of, like, what does your defense look like? Even if you're better in left field, you're better at first base, but what does your defense really look like if your double play duo, one of them is a shortstop without much range and the other one is a second baseman without much arm? And it's really hard in terms of, center field, catcher, and the double play duo. If you're not strong there defensively, and this has been true for 100 years of baseball, like, you want to build the core up the middle. And so I wonder, like, is Keishel destined for left field himself, where he could be fast and athletic and maybe be a good left fielder? Maybe Brooks Lee is destined for second base, where he would be much better. But again, that requires a shortstop.
for a utility role where he would be
whatever.
Exactly right.
And so I wonder about that. And I think that's one of the things that the payroll itself, the cheaper you go in terms of payroll, the more it's screaming to lean into youth, athleticism, speed, defense, because that's just going to be cheaper and it's going to be younger. And you're going to have more of that in your minors than a guy who can hit 30 homers. Yeah. And so maybe it's one of those things that is a domino effect of ownership being cheap.
Right.
Maybe. You just go, well, Austin Martin is our left fielder. And it's like he might hit 3 homers the whole year, but he's pretty fast. He could be a pretty decent defender, I think, in left field, and he's going to steal 30 bases, and there we go. All of a sudden,
he's on base 38% of the time. Yeah. Right.
And so I think we might see some of that. But yeah, that's one of those things where, is this last 6 or 7 weeks and the last week or so of the season where they've been running like crazy? They've had some decent success. I know the players like it. I know Baldelli likes it. Is this just the season ends and the front office goes, well, that was weird, right? Anyway, we're moving on. Or do they go, all right, maybe there was something here. And maybe if we give him a little bit more to work with in terms of those skill sets, maybe you can be this aggressive in an even more effective way because you're not just asking Matt Wallner to steal a couple bases, but maybe your corner outfielder actually can steal 30 bases, and then you can do that sort of thing. Speaking of guys stealing bases, Byron Buxton stole third base for the second time. Took him 11 years to do it for the first time and 15 games to do it for the second time.
Yeah.
He's at 24. He's 24 for 24. So he needs 6 to get to 30. I think that's pretty unlikely. But he should get to 25.
Yeah, hopefully.
Which would be the first 30-25 season in the history of the Twins.
Yeah.
He's definitely motivated to run. As we've talked about it over the years with him, he's just not on first base that often. Most of his hits are doubles and homers. So here's the other thing, though. I had been wondering, that Philly series at the end of the season, are they going to be motivated to play Byron Buxton? Let's just, we got him to the end here. Why risk? I mean, we saw when he stole third base the other day, it looked like he might have hurt his hand. And I'm like, oh, boy. I was all ready to say to you, by the way, today, see, John, you wanted him to run like crazy. And I kept saying, well, if he runs, he's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's okay. But here's the thing that might keep them from benching him. Yesterday, he reached 502 plate appearances, which is what you need to qualify for the batting title. And in his contract, there was a incentive for reaching that, for qualifying for the batting title, 502 plate appearances. He got $500,000 for that.
Yep.
And he has another $500,000 incentive. That's like 25 or 30 more plate appearances away. Something like
500. Here's what it says on COTS.
Okay.
$500,000 each for 502.
Yeah.
533,
which is now 29 away.
Yep. 567.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's not going to risk.
That's probably too much. Yeah.
Yeah. But 29 in 10 games is, he would get that if he plays all 10 games. I mean, you're going to get more than 3 per game. The question is, are they going to sit him? He's going to be motivated to play. First of all, he's just motivated to play in general this season, every season, but he's able to do it this season. But, $500,000. And I'm not a guy who says players should be focused on making an extra $500,000.
Sure.
But if there's anybody who deserves an extra $500,000, it's Byron Buxton.
Right. Yeah,
he's already been worth, in terms of wins above replacement converted into dollars and all that, he's been worth 40-something million dollars on the field, and he's getting paid $15 million. Yeah. And my other thought on that is, it's the Pohlads' money. So give him $10 million. Give everyone $500,000. I mean, I'd sure as hell rather go to Byron Buxton. I'd rather give Byron Buxton $500,000 and have him flush it down the toilet than have the Pohlads keep that money. And so I would like to see
I'll
him.
also say this, if he gets, there is something, that it makes national news, like a 30-30 player, which is going to be, like you said, it's going to be really hard for him to get to that point. But if he makes it to a 30-30 player, I think he's already going to be getting MVP votes if he ends up anywhere from 6th through 10th in MVP
this is the other
votes.
Incentive that he has.
He gets another $3 million.
Right.
And if he gets 5th, it's $4 million, 3rd, $5 million, etc. So
right. And this was all part of the extension he signed in 2022, right before the lockout.
Right.
And it was a 6-year extension for $15 million a year, which now isn't even one of the top 100 salaries in baseball. And like I said, he's been worth 2.5 times that. He's already almost been worth the entire contract, and there's still 3 years left on the contract. So that tells you the value they've gotten. But part of the premise of that, and the reason at that time that he kind of signed what was a team-friendly deal, one, he wanted to be in Minnesota. I mean, we've talked about that endlessly. He's made that so clear on anytime someone sticks a microphone in front of him. He didn't want to go anywhere. And there was talk of them trading him to actually the Phillies at the time, I remember. And, they had 1 more year left of him, and it was like, if we can't sign him, we're going to trade him. And he was like, let's go. I'll sign. And they did it. Part of it was he had so many injuries at that point that it was like, well, what's fair market value for a guy who's amazing for 80 games a year? And they found a middle ground that they were comfortable with, which is you're getting paid as a good regular,
right?
With the idea that when you're healthy, you perform like a star, and that's basically it. But then in seasons like last year and this year, when he's performing like a star, but he's also mostly healthy, well, he blows away $15 million in production. But
Sure.
part of that contract included the incentives that you just talked about, because it was like,
If
if
he
I,
really breaks through, yeah.
right, if I do stay healthy for 500, 533, 567, which are, you play 100 something games, that's, you're getting there. You get another $1 million a year, let's say, from that. He
That's right.
hasn't really reached that until this year because he just hasn't been healthy enough. And then also there was MVP related bonuses, like you said, where if he wins AL MVP, he gets 8 million. He gets
Right.
7 million for second place, 6 million for third place, 5 million for fourth place, and then like you said, 3 million for like down ballot
Right.
stuff. And that
Sixth
was
or tenth. Yeah.
built in there because of the recognition that $15 million per year was no one's idea of a justifiable salary for a talent of that level.
Right.
But also a $90 million 6 year commitment was a big one for a guy who just hadn't stayed healthy.
Right.
So that's the middle ground they found. And he just hadn't been able to stay healthy enough to get to that point. Now this year he's already got a 500,000. I think pretty likely to get another 500,000.
Yeah.
And then I actually think he's definitely going to finish in the top 10 for MVP.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with you.
he
Yeah.
should. I mean,
Yes.
in my opinion, I'm biased, but I don't have an MVP vote. I have a what do I have a rookie of the year vote this year.
Okay.
It rotates. Like one year you get MVP, one year you get
Right.
BBWAA. So I have no ability to affect that. But I think, he made the All-Star team. He participated in the home run derby. He's certainly as prominent of a player as you're going to get in Minnesota in terms of national recognition. Like no
Sure.
one's going to go, oh, wow, Byron Buxton's having a good year. Like I think it's pretty known at that point.
Sure.
So I'm hopeful that he finishes, eighth, ninth,
Yes.
10th, whatever,
Right.
and could come away here with closer to $20 million instead of $15 million for this season. So that'll be something to watch in terms of that. And then last but not least, talk about, we got way into this with Dan, Baldelli's job status. And,
Yeah.
I realize we're talking about like Austin Martin or Cody Clemens or even the aggressiveness on the bases. It's like, well, Baldelli would love to do this. Well, that's only relevant if Baldelli's still the manager next year.
Correct.
And that is certainly at this point a question. Not because I'm claiming to have heard any inside for information. I mean, there's been speculation and stuff, but just because, as we've said before, like they're missing the playoffs for the fourth time in 5 years.
Yep.
And they're at a point in a 5 year cycle, let's say, where no matter if you say, well, ownership's to blame more than anybody, or even the front office is far more to blame, the truth is you missed the playoffs 4 times in 5 years. A lot of managers don't make it through that. And even last year when they collapsed,
Yeah.
we talked about the fact, like, is this going to get him fired? Like,
Right.
just
Yeah.
a
I mean, a
collapse.
lot of managers don't make it through a collapse like that at the
Right.
end of the season. Right.
But the one factor here that's a little bit weird is that he's been around since 2019. The front office has been in place, at least Derek Falvey's been in place since 2017. And they've had that same lack of success over the last 5 years.
Yes.
And they've built the teams that have done this. But if they're not going to get fired, I think that increases the chances of Baldelli being fired, in that unless they just do nothing, which is going
Right.
to be wildly unpopular. But actually, my theory is the Poets just don't care. Like,
Yes. Right.
they're already wildly unpopular. What's the difference between a negative 99 approval rating or a negative 100 approval rating
Right.
on some
Yeah.
level? But
Yes.
the truth is that most managers, most coaching staff, and most front offices who don't have, how'd you put it? Like, haven't banked.
Yeah, haven't built up the bank account. They haven't made
Right.
deposits into the fan experience bank account.
Right.
Yeah.
In other words, Tom Kelly was allowed to manage through 6 horrendous seasons or 8 horrendous
Yeah.
seasons because he had 2 championships.
Yes.
No one
Right.
cared about.
Yeah.
People still talk about him as a legend.
And Baldelli had that after the 2023 season. I think that's one of the things that protected him last year in 2024 is he ended up having a couple of big playoff wins. It was just a year ago. We really thought this guy was something. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they had a big collapse, but whatever.
And I think he also got shielded by the focus on ownership, which is
Sure.
righteous.
Sure.
But that it was like, well, what do you expect? The ownership's terrible. That's still true. Ownership is even worse now. And there is part of me that goes, well, what do you want him to do? But the reality is, you missed the playoffs 4 times in 5 years. Like, I mean, you're fair game at that point. And if they're not gonna, and I think the truth is, most managers and most front offices in this position over the course of 5 years, without that built up, banked success that even like Gardenhire and Terry Ryan had, to a much less level than McPhail and Tom Kelly, but still
Right.
more so than Ryan, or more so than Baldelli and Falvey have, certainly. They don't make it. But if the front office is not in any danger, and that's certainly my sense, I mean, hell, they gave him a promotion off the collapse last year,
Right.
Falvey. If the front office is not in any danger, then that, I think, increases the likelihood of the manager and or coaching staff being the ones in danger. Whether the front office wants to do it or not, it's at some point it's like self-preservation, right? It's like,
Right.
the heat is starting to rise.
We've got to make some change. We know we can't do just this,
Right.
right? And we can't fire ownership. So
I've looked
and we
into
don't want to
that.
fire, and we ain't firing ourselves.
I looked into firing ownership. Not doable,
No.
unfortunately. Yeah, my Google searches were like, how can you kick someone off their own podcast?
That's
And
right.
how
Yeah.
can you fire owner of
Yeah,
a team?
yeah.
And neither of them. They were like,
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
you're SOL, buddy.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I think that's why the Baldelli thing is looming. And what's interesting, of course, is that they already picked up sometime mid-season the 2026 option on his contract. Now, that's a bad look. The timing of it was bad when Dan Hayes reported it in like June or whatever,
Right.
because they were losing at that point, and people were like, "What do you mean they already picked it up?" But even I couldn't think less of the Pohlads. Obviously, I think that point is clear, and I don't put anything past them in terms of making decisions based on even small amounts, relatively, of money.
Sure.
But Rocco Baldelli's not making that much money. I mean, he's making more than us, but he's not. He's not
Sure.
making $10 million a year, and so I don't know that picking up his option for 2026 even
Provides
if
any reasonable disincentive for,
I mean, maybe it's like a tiebreaker.
Listen, we
in their
talked about
mind.
this at the time. I wondered if that, option was picked up before spring training. Like, you just don't have a lame duck manager going into a year generally. You
Right.
just don't. It's part of the cost of doing business is that you pick up you're going to pay whatever manager you end up hiring. Whenever you end up making a change, that manager is going to be paid for 1 year, at least 1 year beyond that in which you fire him.
Yeah, I mean, they used to do that with Gardenhire all the time, and it's not so much for the manager, it's for the clubhouse.
Right.
Because if you know as a player or players that the guy telling you to do stuff and the guy filling out the lineup and the guy running the team is a free agent after the season,
Right.
part of you might be like, what am I listening to you for?
Right.
Or part of you, it could affect the manager's behavior too. Like it could affect what they're
also
trying to do.
You're also just protecting yourself as somebody who likes to have an asset. Like, if the manager does a decent job, you don't want that manager walking as a free agent.
Well, yeah, we
and
saw
make
that
him-
with the Timberwolves and Chris Finch.
Well, and with Craig Counsell with the
Yeah.
Brewers going to the Cubs, right?
Yeah, other teams came calling for Chris Finch, and the Wolves said, F off, he's under contract.
Right,
And
that's
in Craig Counsell's case, the Cubs were able to poach him because he was done with his contract with the
Right.
Brewers.
That's right.
And so those are all factors for sure. But I think it just comes down to, I think if the front office had its druthers, they would just keep Baldelli. I think they're believers in Baldelli. I think they're attached at the hip with Baldelli. I think there's a recognition that as much as the ownership is the domino effect that limits the front office,
Right.
the front office then is the domino effect that limits Baldelli in terms of the roster.
Sure.
I think there's also a sense of, well, we gutted the roster. Like no one was going to win. Dig up John McGraw. He wasn't going to win with this team.
Right.
But so I think if the Pohlads just said to Falvey and company, it's up to you. Truly up to you. I think they would keep Baldelli. I also think there's a weird argument for keeping Baldelli if you think next year's going to be bad anyway.
Right.
Because
yeah.
it's like, why bring in a new guy and get him messy from this?
Yeah.
Why not wait another year? Maybe it turns around, in which case, great. And maybe it doesn't, in which case, then you clean slate it with a new guy and they're 1 year closer maybe to a rebuild being competitive. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to this. Are the Pohlads interested in making changes? Or are they just checked out completely? If they're checked out completely and you leave it up to the front office, I think they might keep Baldelli in the role. But if the Pohlads say, we cannot stand by for another year of this, from a PR standpoint, from a ticket sales standpoint, from just a public approval rating standpoint, there has to be some changes. Well, the moment the poll ads tell the front office there has to be some changes, Baldelli's gone because he's the only viable change. Like what you can fire the hitting coach again. You did that last year. You can, find some fourth in command in the front office and fire him or reassign him or whatever. But that's not going to satiate the masses at all. And nor should it, by the way, at this point.
Right.
They're too deep into this thing. And so the front office surely knows that a lot of front offices get fired by this point. And so if ownership is saying to them, you guys are safe, but something's got to give here. There needs to be sacrifice to the masses here at some point. Then I think Baldelli is in real trouble. And it seems like for a while now, you've kind of been of that mindset too.
Yeah, I mean,
which I don't blame you for. I mean, just performance.
I thought his destiny was determined at the trade deadline. I thought it was determined a few days before the trade deadline. And that's not saying I don't think Baldelli is a good manager, and I think he's worked hard. I think he's tried to do things this year. Maybe even going against sort of the overall vibes of the organization. Whether it was, hey, why is spring training so laid back? Let's start trying to do some things a little bit. Ultimately, no matter what it is, it didn't work. We had the collapse last year.
Right.
You just don't get out alive in that sort of situation. And it's not like it's completely unjustified. Like I said, I think he's a good manager, and sometimes you just find yourself in a bad. Lots of us have found ourselves in work situations that it's just a no-win situation.
Well,
you can be really good at your job for whatever reason, whether it's the people above you are effing up, the people below you are effing up, you're just in a bad situation. You're not going to come out of it smelling good, and you're going to end up getting fired. Like that's the way it's going to be.
The reality is, plenty of good managers have been fired.
Right.
World Series winning managers
Right.
have been fired before or after
Right.
winning World Series. Like
Right.
Hall of Fame managers have been fired multiple times. And I forget who said it, but the saying is like you get hired to get fired, basically.
Of course.
In this role. And
Right.
that's not to say I think they should fire him. I think we're largely on the same page. Well, I think he's fine.
Yeah.
I think if you handed him a good roster, you can win with it. If you hand him a bad roster, he's not going to win with it. I personally don't have that big of a I don't view managers as that impactful. And I know there are a lot of people who disagree, but good or bad, I think managers win with their players. And I will always put more heat and more of a magnifying glass on the front office and on the players themselves, for that matter, than the manager. I don't think managers are unimportant, but relative to the people who build the roster and then the people who are on the roster, I will always, and I'm being good, bad, indifferent. I viewed Kelly this way. I viewed Gardenhire this way. I viewed Molitor this way. I'll view the next guy this way. If you hand him a good roster, he can probably win with it. If you hand him a bad roster, he probably can't win with it. But to your point, you don't always make it out alive.
Sure,
and
sure.
if you miss the playoffs 4 times in 5 years and he gets fired, he can sit there with some pride and say, I won Manager of the Year in 2019. I won the division and broke a 2-decade playoff losing streak that 2 other well-regarded
Yep.
managers were not able to do. I have a winning record. I have the 3rd most wins in Twins history. He's not a bad manager. But the reality is, if you don't have a great track record of success and you miss the playoffs 4 times in 5 years, including a late season collapse 1 year and a full season collapse the next year,
The team has
you don't
underperformed
always make it out
expectations.
alive.
Yeah, the team has underperformed expectations for a year and a half. That's it. That's all there is. Like you can say that's because there's other problems with the organization. We spent a fair amount of time, or at the beginning of the conversation with Dan Hayes, kind of talking about maybe some of the players' attitudes going into the year was a little shaky, given what they were seeing going on above them, whether it was payroll concerns or arbitration stuff, or the haves and the have-nots versus the locker room. All of that stuff is you can't necessarily lay it at Baldelli's feet, but that's the job. Like the job is to overcome to present the intangibles and the culture and the attitudes and get everybody rowing in the same direction, etc. And when that doesn't happen, and you see that not just this year, but after the collapse last year, and you see those sort of divisiveness, that's the sort of thing that does pop up when you've got a player's manager. I think, by the way, I mean, I presume, by the way, that some of the players who are maybe dissatisfied or aren't maybe the biggest fan of Baldelli's are in for a fairly rude awakening with whoever the next manager might be.
Yeah.
Because generally the way this works is you go from players manager to disciplinarian, and disciplinarian is going to bump some heads against some guys in this clubhouse.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out for the future seasons.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I like Baldelli as a person.
Oh, of course.
He's good to deal with. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's a good guy. I think he does a solid job. I think more often than not,
Gives great insights.
I think he's been well respected for the most part, which is this year the few instances where it's like he's clashing with a player or two.
Sure.
That's why that stood out, because it hasn't been a regular thing in that clubhouse, which I think is a credit to him. But it's not personal. This is the job.
That's it. Yeah.
My job's to talk about this. His job's to, manage it. And I will also say this, and he's joked about this. He won Manager of the Year in 2019.
Right.
And he will tell you, as a rookie manager, by the way, never managed before. And he will tell you, I sat on my hands the whole year. We were up 8-3 in the fourth inning every year. We hit the most home runs ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I had Nelson Cruz running the clubhouse. I had 7 different guys, I think, hit 30 homers or whatever the hell it was. He's like, I think I did an okay job for a rookie, but was I the best manager in the league?
Yeah.
Well, no. And now you fast forward to this year, where I actually think he's gotten to be a better manager.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's worked harder. I agree with you. This is probably the best job he's done managing.
But
yeah,
it's the opposite.
Right.
He could pull every lever possible.
Yeah.
When you're handing the ball to, Michael Tonkin with a 1-run lead in the 8th inning, you're going to look like a bad manager. When you're writing out lineups and you don't even have enough right-handed hitters to fill a lineup against left-handed pitchers because they haven't provided you with that roster, you're going to look like a really bad manager. And so maybe it all evens out in the end. You know what I mean? Like
maybe, yeah.
And that is kind of how I view managers overall, like I said a minute ago, which is they get too much, in my mind, they get way too much credit for things going well, and they get way too much blame for things going poorly. But that is the reality. That's been the case with managers for my whole life, certainly, and I'm sure well before that. And if you're going to kind of reap the benefits in 2019 and 2023 of, hey, the team won, you must be a great manager. The flip side is, hey, the team's losing, you must be a terrible manager. The truth is somewhere in between. I think he's a solid manager. I don't think he's one of the best. I don't think he's one of the worst. But at some point, something has to change here.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're in a position to win next year. So really it comes down to, do you want to make this change now, or do you want to make this change a year from now?
Yeah.
And I really think it's going to be more, this is just speculation, but I think it's going to be more about what the poll ads want to do than what the front office wants to do. Because I think if left to their own devices and not pressured to make changes, if they're just told by ownership, it's up to you, we can live with it, whatever you want to do, I think they would be more inclined to keep Baldelli, A, because I think they think he's a good person for the job, but B, if next year's going to be bad anyway, like I said, you fire Baldelli, you bring in a new manager, they lose 95 games next year. Well, now the new manager's got that stink all over him.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And he's got whatever clubhouse issues arise during another frustrating losing season. But if the poll ads just say, look, we can't, people hate us. People hate the team. No one's buying season tickets. No one's watching on TV. And that's where they're at. Through their own, they did it.
Sure, right.
But if the poll ads are like, we can't sit by, there has to be changes, well, then if you're the front office, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're not going to fire yourself, like I said. I wish John would fire himself from the podcast, but he refuses to do it.
Absolutely not. Yep.
Okay, so that's where we're at. We'll be back Monday.
We'll be back
Normal
Monday
show?
to cover the Cleveland series. Yep, I hope so. Yeah, we'll be back Monday to cover the Cleveland
Assuming
series.
we all live through the wedding.
That is
And the open bar and the Black Stack.
And the Black Stack, that's right. Our presenting sponsor, Black Stack. Thank you very much to Black Stack for being our presenting sponsor. They are now available all through Minnesota. Also, quick thank you to our other sponsors that help make this podcast free: Harry's and Prize Picks and Factor Meals. We will be back on Monday at the Patreon. We'll be back out following Wednesday, probably with a mailbag on the Patreon. We'd love to have you join us there, patreon.com/Gleeman. Throughout the week, if you want to see some clips from this show or even from the Patreon piece, you can check out our YouTube channel. YouTube.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell people to go to YouTube. We're
right.
as handsome as ever, folks. You should get a good long look.
You can see the makeshift background that I'm in right now, not my usual studio. And you'll see wherever the hell I am in Philadelphia when we're podcasting from there next week. And otherwise, we'll talk to you next Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.
Gleeman